Okay, welcome everybody. It's nice to have you here. And today I'm going to share with you uh, five five steps that will allow you to remake your life in the way that you would like it. So that's going to be the content of today's talk, and I think we'll just get right into it. So, well, actually, before I get right into it, let me tell you, just to make sure that you know whether you're in the right place or not. I don't want to waste anybody's time uh, by not being completely transparent about what the overarching intention here is. So the intention here is to support you in self-realization. And self-realization, as I define it, means to know yourself, to know your powers, and to know your relationship with reality. And the benefit of that is that it removes fear. So, right now, for most people, fear is a dominant driving factor in their lives. And that fear remains so long as you don't actually have clarity about who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, then you're just constantly going to be anxious. And so, having that knowledge of who you are, what your powers are, and your relationship with reality will allow you to release fear from your life, and that will allow you to actually start to live consciously, creating your life according to your true desires. So hopefully that sounds like a good deal to you. If it does, then you're in the right place. If not, then now you know. And so, as I said, today's talk is about five steps that you can use to remake your life in any way that you would like, and hopefully in a good way. And so I thought that it would be helpful if I could just, sort of break it down into a number of steps. And I've even come up with an acronym. And I don't know if it's a good acronym or a bad acronym. It might be really stupid, but it's an acronym, so it will help you to remember it. And I guess stupid is helpful too, if it helps you to remember it. So that acronym is REAPER, as in not the Grim Reaper, but as in you reap what you sow. So you are the reaper of that which you sow in your life. And so that is REAPR, five steps. And I'll tell you what those five steps are as we go through it. So the first step is to recognize, and that means to recognize yourself. And so I'm going to I'm going to actually guide you through this whole process so that you can have an experience of this for yourself. And in order to do that, I want to also use a metaphor to help this connect for you. So I'm going to use this metaphor, which I've used before, which is a metaphor of a house. So you could imagine perhaps that your life is like a house, and this is your domain. So it is yours to do with as you please, and it is of your creation. And you can, once you have this house, then you can put in this house, furnish the house however you want. You can model the house however you want, or remodel the house however you want. And so most people get stuck identifying with the house and with the current furnishings of the house, the state in which it is presently. Now, they might not like the current state of their house, but they're so identified with it that change becomes basically impossible. And so maybe you can recognize this in your own life, where you might, on a conscious level, want to make certain changes in your life, but then you find that you continue to be stuck, not actually producing those changes that you want or sustaining the changes. You might just procrastinate, or you might space out, or you might feel that you're too busy, or you might even take some steps but not get success with them, or you might even get success short term but then self-sabotage. All kinds of things might be going on there. And in order to help yourself out, the number one thing that you want to do is you want to be able to recognize that you are not the house. You are not limited to the contents of your life. You are not limited to the structure of your life. You're not limited to any of that. This is so, so, so important, because if you continue to stay identified with the thing that you want to change, it makes it very, very difficult to change. Because if you say, I am this thing, then any change is a threat to you. And so this first step is so important. And a lot of the time, this is really, a lot of people miss this step. They don't, either it's never presented to them, or even if they have awareness of this step because they practice meditation, which I know is a terrible word that I should never use. And I try to avoid using that word, but some people practice a thing called meditation. I'm not an advocate of it necessarily. But I know a lot of people do this and then they have certain experiences with that meditation. And that might help them to have this recognition that they are not limited to the contents of their life. They're not limited to the structure of their life. They're not limited to their identities and all the rest of it. But then that doesn't necessarily translate into anything, any real change in their life because they're not making that necessary connection that allows them to translate that recognition into power to make change in their life because they're not actually disidentifying with the rest of their life. In the meditation, they'll have a glimpse, a recognition of something, but that's not necessarily translating into the rest of their life. So actually being able to have that recognition in a in an ongoing fashion where that starts to become a habit of recognizing that I am that which is the creator of my life. I am not that which is created. I am the creator of my life is very, very important. And so that's the first step in this process of remaking your life. And so I'd like to offer you a brief guided practice so that you can have a glimpse of that. Because if you can have a glimpse of that, that will be very helpful for you in order to have success with the remainder of the process. So if it's comfortable for you, close the eyes. If it's not comfortable, then you needn't close the eyes. But the point of closing the eyes is just to reduce the amount of visual stimulation because all of that visual stimulation produces a lot of noise in the nervous system. And while that's not inherently problematic for our purposes right now, we just like to be able to reduce that so that it can offer a little bit more clarity on the actual uh, circumstances within our experience. And it's also very helpful just to be reasonably comfortable in general. So allow yourself that. So just let go of any unnecessary tension in the body. And if your mind rebels at that and says, oh no, that's impossible. I've got so much tension. I'll never be able to let go of it. Then just know that you have permission to have and maintain whatever level of tension you do, but just allow yourself to let go of whatever can be let go of easily. So you don't have to have any fear that if you have tension that you don't seem to be able to let go of, that means that you won't be able to succeed in this. It's not true. You'll be able to succeed. The point is just to allow yourself whatever level of comfort is readily available to you. So just let go of whatever you can let go of. And whatever remains, just make peace with it, at least for now. Just accept it. Just say, you're welcome to be here for however long you need to be here. I'm not going to fight with you. And then make good on that. Don't fight with it. So here, just notice now that you are aware of all the content of your experience. So you're aware of whatever sensations you're aware of, and you're aware of perhaps whatever thoughts may be happening. And you're aware of the sounds that are happening. And even though the eyes may be closed, there still may be some visual sense occurring. And so you're aware of that. Maybe there's some awareness of smell or taste. So all of that you're aware of. And notice that all of that is happening in this space of awareness that you are. So you can notice that all of the content is changing, it's moving, shifting. It's not constant. It comes and it goes. And it's all coming and going, having its existence in this space that is continuous and eternal. So this space remains. The space is unchanging. The content is changing. So just notice that. It's a very simple thing. It's just about noticing. You don't have to convince yourself of anything. It's just obvious if you just notice it. The space is here. It's always here. And it's unconditional. The space does not depend upon anything. Space is always the space. There's nothing that you can do to change that. Nothing diminishes the space nor augments the space. It's just always space. So then just to be clear, the awareness that I'm referring to is an unconditional awareness. So it's not about heightened levels of awareness or diminished levels of awareness. It's not about cognizing anything or anything like that. It's just about the space in which everything is occurring. Things are just simply registered. So the cognitive process, the thinking process, the analytical process, all of those kinds of things, those also come and go. Those can be heightened or diminished depending on various factors like what you've eaten or how you've slept or all kinds of things like that. But the space and that basic underlying awareness in which things are simply registered is independent and unconditional. It's always here, does not change. So just notice that there's the unchanging space, and then there's all of the content, which is always changing, coming and going. So then just notice that your entire experience always consists only of the contents that are coming and going in this space. So right now, if your eyes are closed, it may be the case that there's a sense that you're experiencing something internally and that this is somehow distinct from the external world. But I want to now help you to recognize that that's a false distinction, that there's only ever this one reality, and we could call it simply internal in the sense that it's all internal to consciousness or awareness or space. But it's not in contrast with anything external because there is nothing external. So the idea of something that's not this content that's occurring in space, something that's either outside or inside, is a false distinction. So I just want to guide you through a simple inquiry to help you recognize that. So notice right now that you are aware of sounds, and you might be aware of the sound, presumably, at least you're aware of the sound that you might think of as the sound of my voice. And out of habit, it may be that there's something in your brain that tells you that my voice is something happening outside of you. But just take a look and notice in the actual direct experience, is it actually happening outside of you? Just notice in the direct experience that the sound is simply occurring as content in space. So it's not actually outside of you. It's not outside of the space of awareness that you are. It's happening as content in the space that you are. So the idea of the voice happening outside is just an idea. And that idea itself is also happening in space. So the idea of outside and inside is happening in this space, and the sound is happening in this space, and all of it is happening here and now. It's never at a distance. It's just happening perfectly intimately right now. So hopefully that is clear to you. Now, I'll next invite you to become aware of the sensations that you experience, and particularly notice the sensations, at least if there are any sensations, that your mind might tell you are the sensations indicating that which you are resting upon. So if you're sitting on something like a chair or a floor or a cushion or whatever it is that your mind tells you you're sitting on, notice the sensations that you experience that you associate with that object. So again, if it's a chair, just as an example, okay, so if you're sitting on a chair, your mind associates some sensations with that object, with that chair, and just notice those sensations. So there is a thought that says these sensations mean the chair or whatever else it might be. And the invitation now is to notice that the actual sensations are happening in this space of awareness that you are. So the actual sensations are not actually outside of you. They're not at a distance from you, and they're not actually a chair. The sensations are sensations occurring as phenomena in the space of awareness that you are. So they're not at a distance. They are absolutely intimately here now. And so next, and for this part, take your time. There's absolutely no hurry, but when you do feel ready to transition to an open-eyed state, I invite you to do so very slowly and only when you feel ready to observe that the visual content is also happening in this space of awareness. So that's the invitation, is to notice that the visual content is also happening in the same space of awareness. So for most of us, the mind associates the visual content very strongly with something outside. And so this part of the exploration is fairly important. So please give yourself the opportunity to integrate this slow opening of the eyes and that increase in visual stimulation so that you can have the direct realization that the visual content is also happening in the same space of awareness. So the opportunity here in this first step, which is to recognize that you are that space, you are that awareness, you are that in which all the content is occurring. So you are not defined by or limited by any of the content. So I'm using this metaphor of a house and the furnishings of the house. So there is a there is a thing that happens which we call identification, in which we become attached or identified with the contents, and we say, "Oh, this is me. This is my body, my personality, my relationships, my way of being in the world, my problems." And that identification, so long as we cling to it, can greatly limit our ability to successfully remake our lives. So this first step is to recognize I'm none of that. I never have been. I'm the source and the creator of my life, and that my life is occurring within me, within the awareness, within the space that I am. So this is very important, and it points out this first principle that I want to point out, which is a very important one, which is it's the law of cause and effect. So all effects have causes, and the cause is always within. So here I'm just saying within, meaning that which is within consciousness, within space, which is to say everything. But if we play this game in mind and we say there's an inside and there's an outside, then it's very important to understand that what we're calling the outside is just the downstream effect of the cause, and that cause is what we set into motion through our inner reality. So if you are fixated on the outside, which most people are trained to be, then it greatly reduces your efficacy in making the changes that you want to make in your life. So it's really, really helpful to be able to understand or at least accept that you create your reality from the inside out. So what that means is if you're like most of us are conditioned to do, if you're trying to figure out what steps you're going to take on the outside, you know, what phone calls you should make, what courses you should sign up for, what job applications you should submit, what text you should send, what way you should say the thing that you want to say in order to get the result that you want to get. All of that is what's actually just called manipulation. And I refer to that as rearranging the furniture. So using this metaphor of the house, again, if you have your house already furnished and you say, oh, I'm going to make some change, and you just rearrange the furniture, you haven't actually made any real substantial change. You've just rearranged the furniture, but you can temporarily produce the illusion for yourself that you have produced change, but it's totally illusory. And so this focus on the outer stuff, the outer actions, is what I call rearranging the furniture. It gives the illusion of producing change, but fundamentally no change is made because the causes that set into motion the real change have not changed. In order to get the real change, you have to change the causes, which have to do with what you're thinking, believing, perceiving, feeling. Okay, so it's all of this inner stuff. It's all the stuff that most people try desperately to avoid by busying themselves with rearranging the furniture. You know, it's like the house is falling down upon them, and they're saying, "Oh, isn't it great that everything's so new and so clean and so fresh because they've put a new coat of paint on the wall." It's only when finally, for most of us, it's only when things are really dire, when it's like the roof has actually finally caved in and it's pinning us down, that we finally say, okay, I've got to do something different. So, but unfortunately, oftentimes, even then, people fail to do anything different. So what I'm offering you here is the steps so that you can actually do something different. So again, step one is to recognize that you are that infinite, eternal, continuous space of awareness, of consciousness in which all of this is occurring. So you are not limited by or identified with any of the stuff. You don't have to have any attachment to any of the content. You are free to make the changes. And this might seem easier said than done, but it just is. With all things, it requires practice. So just practice it regularly every day. You don't have to take hours and hours. You don't have to sit in, with your, fingers in a certain mudra and, whatever om for 2 hours a day. How about just every day just for a few minutes? Just offer yourself this direct recognition. Just pause, let go, and then just notice that all of the content is coming and going in the space of awareness that you are. Just notice that directly. Doing that more frequently is more powerful than doing it for longer durations. Longer duration will come naturally later on, but do it more frequently in order to get better results. So do it at least once a day for good results. If you want even better results, do it 2 or 3 times a day. But again, not for hours, just for a few minutes, even for a few seconds, will start to set into motion positive changes in your life. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is E, right? Because it's REAPR. So E is to envision. So if you want to change, you have to envision what that change is. And this is something that many people, as obvious as it is, many people fail to do this. If you really start to tell the truth about it, you'll notice that you, most likely, like most people, have, for most of your life, simply been reacting rather than envisioning something truly new and desirable. You're just reacting to what you don't want. And so oftentimes people will even will say, well, but I am envisioning. I'm envisioning what I want. And if I say, okay, what do you want? And they'll say, well, I want I want to be free of all of the oppression. Sorry to laugh because I've been there, many times. So I understand, but please, if you want to be free of the oppression, if you want to be free of the negative relationship dynamics, if you want to be free of the health problems, if you want to be free of the tyranny, if you want to be free of the poverty, if you want to be free of any of these things, there's a fundamental law, which is the law of attention, that's very important to understand. And that law states that whatever you put your attention on, that's where the energy goes, which means that's what grows. So if you say, I want to be free of the oppression, what is your attention going to? Now, you might think initially, oh, well, my attention is going to freedom. But actually, what your attention is going to is what you want to be free from. You want to be free from the oppression, from the tyranny, from the health problems, from the poverty, from the whatever. So that's where your attention is going. And this will tell you exactly why it is that you continue to have that same problem. So again, the second step, so important, is to envision what it is that you actually want. And this is a step that if you want success, you cannot afford to skip it. And I encourage you to put attention on this every day. It's not like you do it once and then you're done. Put attention on it every day for several reasons. One, because you have to get increasing clarity about what you want. And I often tell people this, and I'll tell you it now. So if you imagine, or rather, if you remember something that happened yesterday, then your mind does not have any resistance to that because your mind accepts it as completely true, right? So that's what you want when you are envisioning your desired outcome. You should be able to envision it in your imagination just as though you're remembering something that happened yesterday. So you don't have to have some, overwhelming feeling of ecstasy. You just need to have a sense of reality and naturalness to it so that it's indicating that you have complete acceptance of it as true. So if you're not presently able to do that, then that just means continue to do that work on a daily basis. And here too, this is not about, you don't have to take hours and hours every day in visualization. And also, if you say, well, I'm no good at visualization, I can't visualize anything, then uh, that doesn't matter. Okay, some people are more visually oriented than others, but I can guarantee you can have success with this in your own way, however you imagine things. Even if it's not a particularly visual way, nonetheless, you have the capacity to imagine. I know that for a fact because you always create your experience. The fact that you're here now having this experience is proof positive that you are capable of imagining because that's the only way that you could have this experience. You just have to learn how to use that faculty consciously to imagine your desired outcome and do that consistently every day and just for a few minutes. If you want greater success or faster results, do it a few times each day, but at a minimum, do it once each day. So you should envision what you actually want. And again, you want to actually take the time to get clarity about what that is. And it should be an independent thing that you want, not a reaction to what you don't want. It's so important that you don't just waste your time and energy focusing on what you don't want, but pretending like it's what you do want. Again, if you say, I want freedom from something, then you're focusing on what you don't want. You're dressing it up as something that you do want, but it's actually what you don't want. And this is such an important point, which is why I keep saying it over and over, because I find that so many people keep making this mistake, and that's why they're not getting the results. So you have to clarify for yourself what that actually is. And this is sometimes gets very subtle because sometimes it's possible to dress it up in language that makes it seem like it's an independent, positive thing that you're desiring. But if in the back of your mind you're translating that into, I still want to get rid of the thing, then your attention is still going to the thing that you want to get rid of. So you have to train yourself to actually start to shift and put your attention only on the positive outcome that you desire, independent of what you don't want. And this is also so important because oftentimes it turns out what you actually want is somewhat different than what you originally thought. Because what you originally think you want is just to be free of the thing you don't want. But when you actually take the time consistently, day after day, to gain clarity on what you do want, you will maybe realize that what you really want is something a little different than you thought. Just a simple case in point. Nothing's really that simple, I guess, but oftentimes people who struggle with health problems, chronic health problems, they think what they want is to be free of the health problem. Okay. Well, obviously, you now know that if you just want to be free of the health problem, then you're going to continue to have health problems. So then people will translate that into I want health. Well, that sounds nice, right? But the thing is, think about this. Imagine that you were totally healthy. Are you going to be thinking, so grateful that I'm healthy. I'm so grateful that I'm healthy. Isn't it wonderful that I'm healthy? No, because when you experience that health and you basically start to take it for granted, then your focus is not on the health. Instead, it's what you're able to do now that you are healthy. So now that you are healthy, what does that mean for you? So you have to start to think about it this way, because actually you don't want the health. Sorry to break it to you. You want you want whatever that in for you, what that allows you to do or express. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying that oftentimes it will start to shift as you put attention on it consistently. So at first, you're going to find what you don't want. You have to start to translate that and get clarity on what it is that you do want as an independent reality, not as a reaction to what you don't want. And that will start to shift and get clearer and clearer for you as you continually put attention on it consistently day after day. So, next step, see if I can remember, is accept. And so here it's I find very helpful and important to learn to be non-reactive to all of the old stuff. So again, remember, it's like I'm using this metaphor of a house. And so if you decide one day you're like, okay, it's time for the remodel. I'm going to do it. You know, I've 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 been putting it off, but I've followed the first two steps now. So I've recognized that I'm not the house. So it's safe for me to make the changes to the house. I'm empowered to make the changes to the house. I'm going to do that starting in my imagination. So the next step, I'm going to envision my desired outcome. So I'm going to start to actually envision what is it I want? You know, how do I want the bay window? Do I want what am I going to put in a granite counter? What am I doing? You know, am I going to put in the jacuzzi? What is my house going to look like? I have to have a vision for it. And it's not just simply I want my roof not to be falling down on me. I mean, it's like when you actually are happy with your house, are you thinking about, oh, I'm so glad my roof isn't falling down on me? No. So it can't just be a reaction to what you don't want. It has to be a vision, a positive vision for what you do want. So you're envisioning that. Now, once you've done that, then the next step I'm proposing is accept. And this acceptance is so now you have this positive vision, but you're in your so-called outer reality, because there's a time delay here, you're faced with a lot of this stuff that is from the past. Okay, the consequences of your past choices and actions and behavior, i.e., the roof is falling down. Okay, so this is in translated into the rest of our lives. It could be, yes, the outer circumstances of our lives, but it could also be, and this is in some ways I find even more important, it's all of the contents of our psyche that we've been holding on to, that we've been desperately trying to avoid. So it's all of this stuff that would, in today's popular parlance, would usually be called trauma. So all the conditioning that we've been holding on to, and it usually shows up for a lot of us in terms of memories or triggers. Okay, and so a very important thing here is that whenever you get triggered by whatever it is, or if there's some memory that you are desperately trying to avoid, then that is causing you problems. It is siphoning off your positive energy that you could be using for what you want. And instead, it's drawing it off into these negative states. So uh, acceptance here is about learning how to make peace with your own, the contents of your own present psyche. Because if you are fearful and reactive to all of that, then you can't actually expect to make real positive changes. So that's in a practical sense, this is, I find, you could consider it just like mindfulness. Okay. So it's about learning to start to differentiate and distinguish between uh, the all of the stuff that's going on and realize that I'm still here. I'm breathing. I'm present. I'm aware. Content is occurring. All of the, stuff is being triggered. I'm remembering things. I'm experiencing reactions within myself, emotional reactions, physiological reactions, but I'm here. I'm okay. It's a very important skill to learn to have because otherwise your energy is going to be dissipated and you're going to have a really, really hard time to continue to get to put your energy into your desired outcome. So a lot of this is just about energy management. I mean, certainly at this point in the process, it's about energy management. So you're wanting to be able to manage your energy so that you can continually put your energy toward that which you desire instead of having your energy drained into these negative states of avoidance, fear, anger, and these kinds of things. Okay. Next step is P, which this is not the best word, but otherwise the acronym wouldn't have worked. So the P stands for praise, which is good enough, but I actually would think of it as bless. But Reber is I don't know what that means, and so if it, so it's maybe stupid and strange as Reaper is, then Reber is even stupider and weirder. So I went with Reaper praise. Um, but you can also think of it as bless, and so this is really important because um, if you are, it's just again about energy management. So if there's anything or anyone that you are cursing, and you might think, oh, I'm not cursing anything or anyone, but just hold off and just and check it out. If you are cursing anything or anyone, then you are it's poor energy management. And so your energy is being drained. And a lot of the time, people are in the habit of cursing that which is going to work exactly against their desired outcome. I'll give you an example. So somebody wants more money, and then they have a habit of cursing rich people. Think about this. A lot of people do this. They're cursing rich people right and left in their mind, right? They think, oh, all rich people are fill in the blank. They're all rich people are bad. All rich people are stupid. All rich people are don't care about the environment. All rich people don't care about poor people. All rich people don't care about this. All repeat, on and on. They're cursing rich people. This person wants money, but they're cursing rich people. Cursing. So just think about the common targets of cursing. I'm not talking about just using curse words. I'm talking about like negative, uh, you know, like you using psychic weaponry. Okay, because that's what it is. It's like psychic warfare that people are engaged in all day long. And so just start to take a look and see common targets like the government, corporations. Now, you might, so just check it out and see. Okay, so do you think that a government is going to do a better job or a worse job, however you define that, uh, if they're being psychically attacked all the time? it seems pretty clear to me they're probably going to do a worse job. I mean, because that's a heavy burden to be carrying. Is a corporation going to do a better job or a worse job if they're being psychically attacked all the time? It seems pretty clear to me they're going to do a worse job. So a lot of people do this. They play this game where they have, again, they've locked things in, right? So this goes back to step one of recognize. They've locked things in because they say, well, this is just how it is. A corporation is this way. A government is this way. Rich people are this way. This is the way they are. They exist this way. There's no other way. So then in their mind, they're playing this game, right? They've defined this group of people in this way. The people don't actually exist that way, right? The people just are. But for this person, they've defined that group of people in a particular way. And then they've said, and since they exist this way, since all rich people are bad, therefore, the only possible approach that I can have toward rich people is to curse them. So it's siphoning all of this energy and creating this huge conflict within. And oftentimes, not only is that problematic inherently, but oftentimes it's actually directly opposed to the desired outcome that a person wants. So all these steps work hand in hand here. You want to again go back to recognize and see that you've created these definitions. There's no, and you might not have these exact definitions. I'm just using these examples, but let's take the government. So a lot of people have this, they have a definition of the government for themselves, and oftentimes it's negative, right? The government is bad. And so it may be that the government, which is a funny thing to say, but it may be that the government is responsible for some actions that are actions that that a person doesn't like. Okay, so we're going to say person A. Okay, person A, it may be true that person A does not like the actions of his or her government, some certain actions of his or her government. But cursing the government does not help matters. And continuing to lock the government into that definition as something bad that only does bad things certainly does not help matters. So, what might help that government? Well, how about some blessing? How about some positive psychic energy? How about envisioning a government that is uh, composed of individuals who have compassion, awareness, love, uh, and think qualities like this? And sometimes people will think, oh, that's just crazy. Well, how do you think that the government exists? The government exists because it's a co-creation of the people. I mean, and if so, I know some people are going to argue with that, but if you take an honest to goodness look, you will have to conclude that that is the truth. So how can it change? Well, how about as a co-creation of the people? And what people do you have a choice in? You. So you can do that within yourself. You can use your power to bless. And that's what I'm encouraging here. This is all about energy management, and it's about you getting the best outcome for you. So I'm just breaking it down for you. Follow these steps. You will get the results. So what am I at? Okay. So then uh, step 5 is R, which is, um, let's see if I can remember. This is probably one of the most important ones, which is to release. And here, so you'll notice there's kind of a, the the last 3 steps, there's a lot of similarity because it's all about releasing the negative stuff. But here, release is specific to working with meaning or belief. And I've got 9 minutes. I'll see if I can break it down for you. Okay, so we've got so think about again this metaphor of the house. So you've got this house and you want to remodel your house. You want to refurnish your house. You've realized it's time. Okay. And so you've gone through these steps. You've you've taken a step back and you've recognized that you are the creator. You are the space of awareness in which all of this is occurring. So you have that power. You are not identified or attached to any of the existing content. which means that you have total freedom to make the change. Next, you envision your positive desired outcome. Next, you accept that that the present conditions exist, and you are not going to fight against them. You're not going to be fearful of them. You just accept them. So you learn just to actually be present to what is, and that way you can continue to invest your energy into your positive desired outcome. Then you're going to praise or bless all beings, all things. And the reason for this is because you you want goodness in your life. So this is just it's you cannot afford to have enemies. Let's just put it that way. Enemies are going to be an enormous energy suck for you. So you cannot afford to have enemies. So I recommend that you overcome your enemies with love. And it might sound sappy, it might sound new agey or stupid, but it's the truth. It works. And the truth is, all your enemies are within. And I know you might say, but you have lots of outer enemies. Yes, but the true enemies exist within. Because if you come back to that first step, you have to start to understand and recognize that all of this is happening as a play in consciousness, and you are that consciousness. And there's nothing that's happening outside of that. And the causes are always within. So if you want to produce change, you have to work at the level of cause, and you have to accept responsibility. Okay. So then when you understand all of the rest of that, then let's take a look at now you're at a point where now let's say you've managed to clear a lot of the obstacles. You've produced the furniture for your new house. You're ready to remodel it. You've got everything ready to go. But now you have to actually be willing to release what's already there. This is a very critical step. And a lot of people get hung up here. They're just working the first couple of steps. Usually people are just working the envision step, if anything, right? And it's like, that's only going to take you so far, because if you've now got your house still packed with stuff, and a lot of people think about this metaphorically over time, they become like hoarders, right? It's like their house, their metaphorical house, their life is packed from floor to ceiling with stuff. And they just sort of like scoot by these little passageways in their house. It's so cluttered with stuff, which is why oftentimes, unfortunately, as people age, they become more set in their ways, more reactive. It's like the world should just be as I want it to be, and flip it the bird if it's not the way that I think it should be, and everybody else can screw off. That seems to be an attitude that people take more and more in their lives, but it doesn't need to be that way. That's a result of the clutter from not releasing. And so that stuff that needs to be released can show up in many forms, but I'm going to specify one here, which is one of the most powerful ways to work with this stuff. And that's in the form of meaning or belief. And there are many different ways of releasing belief. I have worked with a number of them effectively over time. I've recently come across the work of Morty Lefko, and I found that this process is extraordinary. It's really a next level thing. And so I'm going to share that with you in 4 minutes, which is obviously not going to do it justice, but um, I want to again emphasize that releasing belief on a consistent daily basis is so important and powerful, because otherwise you do all the other stuff, all the other steps, all the other work. But then when it comes down to actually making that change, it's like you've set everything up, it's all there ready to go, but you can't actually move the new furniture in because you've still got from floor to ceiling packed with stuff. You got to clear that stuff out. So that's what this release step is about. So uh, here's how one way that I suggest to do it is that you first of all, you need to get an inventory of your beliefs. And particularly here, we're talking about those beliefs that are particularly limiting for you. I mean, in the long run, you want to let go of all beliefs, because ultimately all beliefs are limiting. But obviously, beliefs can be more or less useful. many of the beliefs that you have, like most of the rest of us, are very unhelpful. And so like some common beliefs are, I'm not good enough, I'm not important, I'm unlovable, I'm stupid. Okay, these are the kinds of beliefs that many, many, many of us have. And they're obviously limiting and problematic for us. So if you have your metaphorical house packed with these beliefs, then you don't have room to move in the nicer, newer stuff. So you're just stuck with those old ways, those old patterns, those old perspectives, which means you're going to keep getting more of the same. This is why people self-sabotage. They do all of the other work, but then when it comes right down to it, it's like, okay, here we go, ready, 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 ready. And then it's like, no, sabotage, because I'm not ready to let go of I'm not good enough. I'm just going to keep that one. It's like, okay, where are you going to move in the new stuff? Nowhere, because your house is packed with all of these negative limiting beliefs. So you've got to release them. So the first thing is you got to make an inventory of them. Now, one process by which you can do this, which is extraordinarily simple and powerful, is this. When you're doing the envision step, so every day, take a few minutes to imagine your desired outcome, to put your attention on your desired outcome. And if you're doing this correctly, what will happen is that you will start to notice that your mind will offer up your limiting beliefs, right? So if you're saying, it's like, okay, so you start to imagine your desired outcome. Okay, I'm experiencing this, if you want a loving relationship, I'm experiencing harmonious, loving relationship. Okay, you just imagine that every day. And then your mind will start to offer up why you don't believe that's possible for you. Okay, so it will say, uh, well, I can't because I'm not important. I can't because I'm not lovable. I can't because I'm unworthy. I can't because because other people are dangerous. I can't because fill in the blank. Okay, all the beliefs that you have, be aware of them, write them down. Writing them down is so helpful and important. And I just want to clarify because a lot of people, some people, I don't know about how many, but some people uh, are fearful of doing this. And the reason they raise this objection often is because they say, well, Joey, didn't you say that there's this law of attention? Whatever I put my attention on, that's where my energy goes and that's what grows. So if I put my attention by writing down my negative belief of I'm not good enough, isn't that giving it the power to I'm not good enough? Well, yes, but unfortunately, that's a superficial understanding that works against you. So I want to clarify for you so you can understand. Um, you're already giving your attention to that belief unconsciously. It's already getting an enormous amount of your energy. It's playing out in your life over and over and over and over and over. It's already dominating you. So writing it down is not going to give it any more energy. I promise you that. There's no way that writing it down will give it more energy. But what writing it down will do is it will make it conscious. So up to now, it has been largely unconscious. Now, you might every once in a while marginally become conscious of some of these beliefs, but then you quickly shove them back under the rug, so to speak. And as long as you're doing that, it's very difficult to make the change. It's very difficult to release a thing that you're not acknowledging actually is there. And so to write it down forces you to make it conscious. If you have to actually put it into words to write it down, that means it is now conscious. So I often say that's 90% of the work. It does most of the heavy lifting for you just to write it down. So please do yourself a favor and write down the limiting beliefs. Do not be fearful of it. Just please understand, you do not have to have any fear or worry about it. They don't have power over you. You have been giving them power and you can reclaim that power. Step one is to write them down. So be empowered in this, be courageous and confident, and know that this is a positive, loving step that you're taking for yourself to write them down. No harm will come from this, only good will come from it. So now that you have written them down, you've identified the limiting beliefs that are in the way of you achieving your desired outcome. Now, the next step is just to release them. So even though I'm telling you that there are techniques that you can use for releasing, and I'm going to walk you through briefly, very briefly, the an approach that can be very effective for this. I want to preface that by saying, don't get hung up on the techniques. The techniques can be helpful, and that's important. but don't give so much power and importance to the technique because really, fundamentally, it just comes down to awareness and intention. Awareness and intention. The awareness is the most important thing. That's why I say just making it conscious does not at least 90% of the work. Because once you are aware of it consciously, that will start to put into motion everything that will start to release it. So if you just continue to put your conscious awareness on it in this open way on a regular basis with the intention of releasing it, that in and of itself will give the result. So you please, again, don't get hung up on the technique. Don't think that you have to perfect the technique or you have to have the perfect technique or any of the rest of that. Have absolute confidence and know the truth, which is that awareness and intention is sufficient. That's the fundamental power that makes everything work. So when you focus that on on releasing a belief, that will do the work for you. The technique is just icing on the cake. The technique will just help to nudge things along a little bit faster. So again, just want to reemphasize that the awareness plus the intention to release it is enough. If you just are persistent and consistent with that, you will release it. And what that means is you just notice every time it's showing up, right? Because then you'll start to gain awareness about what's going on and how that's affecting you and why you even are believing that. And so that will start to loosen it and eventually release it. Okay, with that said, I'm going to briefly walk you through um, a variation on the Lefko technique or the Lefko method, which I have found is an upgraded approach to releasing beliefs because it does tend to work very quickly. And so the essence of this is to understand what a belief actually is. So a belief, just because if we're afraid, if it's like the boogeyman in the closet, then we're afraid of it. But when we realize that what it actually is, then we don't have to be afraid of it. So what is a belief actually? Well, a belief um, is an association between a feeling and meaning that you've given to it at a minimum. Oftentimes, there will also be associated images because there are events from our lives that we associated with that meaning and that feeling. And so the meaning, the feeling, and the images all get paired together. They get associated in the mind. And so then those things that trigger that will then provoke that feeling, which then brings up that meaning, and then possibly the images to corroborate the whole thing. And then if you don't change it, you're just stuck with it. And so that will keep showing up over and over and over in your life. But in order to release it, you just have to dissolve that association between the feeling and the meaning. That's actually all that's necessary. So you don't have to be afraid of a belief. You don't have to feel that the belief has power over you because it doesn't. The belief is just it's a storage form of some information that you formed at an earlier point in your life for good reason, usually for survival. And it was an intelligent thing to have done at that time, given what you had available to you. But the thing is that it became generalized and you never learned how until now to release that association because it's no longer actually serving you or helpful. It might have been helpful when you were 2 years old. It might have been the difference between life and death when you were 2 years old. But now that belief, I'm not good enough, or I'm stupid, or I'm unlovable, or I'm unworthy, is only causing you problems. So you want to learn that you can release it. So the first step then is to either remember or imagine those events that would have led you to form the belief. And in general, not all beliefs were formed in early childhood, but most of them, many of them, at least many of the core beliefs were formed in early childhood. So especially if you're working with a core belief like I am something, okay, I am not good enough, or I am stupid, or I am unlovable, or I am unworthy, then almost all of those beliefs were formed in early childhood, and almost all of them were formed in relationship with parents. There are some exceptions, but almost all the time that's the case. So just in general, assume as much and look to your events from early childhood to look to find out what events would have led you to form the belief. And again, here it sometimes does happen that there would have been one event that would lead you to form a belief. More often, far more often, it's a series of events. And many of those events don't stand out as being extraordinary. They're just sort of common everyday things for you in your childhood. They might have been very unpleasant for you or whatever, but they were just commonplace for you. And so when you're just thinking back, don't look necessarily for some kind of, huge event with an enormous emotional charge. It would just be the kinds of things most likely that would have been happen regularly in your life. Like that, and also importantly, if you can't remember, because many of us don't have a lot of memories from our early childhood, you can at least speculate based on what you do know of your parents or your primary caregivers and how they would have reacted to a young child behaving as a young child does, right? So young children are curious and oftentimes spontaneous, and they're not thinking like, gee, I think I should clean up everything before I move on to the next project. And they're not thinking, oh, I wonder what time it is so I can be sensitive to everybody else's schedule and things like that. So oftentimes parents or adults react to young children's behavior with annoyance or frustration or anger or disappointment or things like that. And the children will then register all of that. And because they feel afraid, will then form a belief that's often, again, a very intelligent belief to have formed given those circumstances. So that's the first step, is to identify those events that would have likely led you to form that belief. Then you want to ask yourself if you've ever seen the belief. So this is about learning to differentiate between what you've seen and the meaning that you've assigned to what you've seen. Because oftentimes what happens is, again, remember I said we will often associate images with the meaning. So in our nervous system, we think they go together. We think they mean the same thing. We think the things that we saw mean what we think they meant. We think that when I saw those expressions on people's faces, it meant I'm stupid. We think when I saw those expressions on people's faces, it meant I'm not good enough. And so that continues to be triggered now. So if we see that kind of expression on somebody's face or just anticipate that kind of expression, then automatically that will trigger I'm not good enough. And that feeling that we associate with I'm not good enough then will hold us back from making any real change in our lives. We'll continue to follow the same path, do the same kinds of things, react in the same ways, totally predictably, so that we continue to get the same kinds of outcomes. So we want to dissolve that association. And we do that in part by recognizing that what we saw was only what we saw and it never meant what we thought it meant. So the things that we saw actually were meaningless. We assign the meaning. And importantly, that does not mean we were wrong to have assigned that meaning. That meaning was probably a very intelligent thing to have assigned. I mean, think about the calculations that are going on in a 2-year-old to come up with those kinds of meanings. It's genius. It helps that 2-year-old to survive and navigate that child's world. But when you're 45, 55, 65, that you've outgrown those meanings. They were very contextualized. And so it's important to make that distinction now and recognize that you never actually saw what you thought, you never saw the meaning. You saw what you saw and you assigned that meaning. So that's the first question. The second question is, have you ever felt the belief? And of course, because the feeling is tightly coupled with the meaning in our association, many people will initially think, yeah, I felt it many times. So then you just go through the process and you recognize, what did you feel? Not what's the story about what you felt, but what did you actually feel? And you'll notice you felt sensations. So you just check it out and you notice, okay, I felt these sensations. I felt these sensations in this situation, in that situation, in this other situation. I was always feeling these sensations. Did those sensations actually mean what I thought it meant? And when you really take a look closely, you'll realize, no, it did not mean what I thought it meant. So then once you're clear that you've never seen the belief and you've never felt the belief, then at that point, it can be it can be that all you have to do is just test to see whether you still have the belief. Oftentimes, you will no longer have that belief, and there's a test, which is just to say it out loud. And if it no longer has any feeling associated with it, then you no longer have that belief. What, um, from what I've seen in the Lefko method, it's not actually specifically used this next step, but I've seen that it's used even though it's not explicit. And so I find that it's helpful then to actually, oh, well, there's one more step, which is to actually find out what are some more helpful interpretations of those events that led to forming that belief. So you just ask yourself, okay, if I was the one way to frame this is imagine that you have a video of those events that led you to form that belief, and you now were to show that to a group of people. What would that group of people say about that? Would they conclude that that belief is the truth of those events? And of course, they wouldn't. What they would usually conclude would be something different. And so you could imagine what kinds of things might those people say. And usually they would say things like, uh, gee, those people, the parents or the whoever, they seemed stressed out. They seemed like they didn't have very good parenting skills. They seemed like they didn't have good communication skills. They seemed like they were overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. And it never meant anything about you. Of course, there could be many possible interpretations, but I'm just suggesting some possibilities that would be common for many types of events. So you want to just see those events in a new way that's helpful and empowering for you. And once you're able to recognize something that's a new way of understanding it that's helpful and powerful for you, then then what I found is that it can be helpful to um, in your imagination go back and meet your younger self and offer that new understanding to your younger self. And this takes a little bit of skill in working with your younger self. Oftentimes, your younger self will be very receptive to it right away. So if that happens, great. If your younger self can just receive that and feel empowered, then then probably the belief is cleared at that point. I find another little added step that can be useful is to then invite or allow in your imagination for your younger self to grow up with that new understanding so that that can be integrated into all of the life events and then merge with you now in the present. So that can be an extra helpful little step at the end there to really kind of seal the deal. Then you can try saying out loud the belief, and let's say 95% of the time, roughly, or if not more, the belief will be cleared at that point. There can be some nuances that I'm not going to talk you through now because I'm just giving you a general overview. Um, but that so, and let me also just say, so sometimes it does require some skill in being able to work with the younger self because sometimes the younger self um, is very frightened. Sometimes the younger self is not trusting at all. And so it's very important to be uh, sensitive to that and don't be aggressive at all. Because a lot of the time, the problem is that the younger self was meeting with aggression or didn't feel seen or heard or important at all. And so if you just kind of barge in there and you say, okay, here's some new helpful understanding. Okay, grow up. That part of you might say, whoa, hold on. You're just like everybody else. You don't care about me. You don't understand me. You're not here for me. You just have your own agenda. So you have to be sensitive and really be present with the younger self and work with the younger self on the younger self's own timeline because you sincerely want what's best for the younger self. If you have that attitude and you work skillfully with the younger self, then you will have good outcomes. But again, be sensitive and work with the younger self with that understanding. Um, so that's a rough overview of the process. I know that's like, too quick. But I wanted to give you that information so that you can start to explore that on your own if you find that, well, you should find it helpful because it's I've found that it's a real upgrade. Previously I've been working with some other techniques that give good results, but not nearly as good as the results that I'm seeing with this approach. So I highly recommend that you explore this approach. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me, especially in the group coaching that we'll follow up with in a moment. So just to wrap all this up, if you follow these 5 steps consistently, I guarantee that you will have positive outcomes. I absolutely guarantee it. You don't have to make it more complicated than this. In fact, you could even simplify it more than this, and 99% of the time, you'd still get very good results. But I wanted to break it down into these 5 steps because I think this is totally comprehensive. If you do these 5 things, you there's no way that you cannot get good results because this covers everything. Of course, there are nuances and subtleties, and there are things that come with working with all this stuff from experience that will help you to, work faster through all these things. And so that's all true. But if you're willing just to consistently apply yourself to this, you will learn those things. You will get good results. You'll keep getting better results. I absolutely guarantee it. No doubt whatsoever. So just again to review, um, recognize, which means just take a moment just to recognize indirect experience that you are that space of awareness in which everything exists. Everything is coming and going. You are the creator of your experience. There's nothing outside of this space of awareness. Second step is to envision your desired positive outcome. And again, this means in an independently positive desired outcome, not a reaction to what you don't want. Third is to accept, meaning to make peace within yourself and not be fearful or reactive to whatever's already there. To just accept and say, okay, this is the content that has been created through my past actions, beliefs, and behaviors. I'm not going to fight with it. I'm not going to be fearful of it. I'm going to accept it. Whatever the feelings, the emotions, the memories, whatever that stuff that comes up, whatever external stuff appears, I'm just going to accept it and see this is just the result of my past causes. I am that, I am the creator of my experience. I'm creating a new now. I will not fight with any of this stuff. I can be at peace now. Learn how to be present to your experience. Breath awareness can be very powerful and helpful for this. Fourth step is to praise or bless everyone, especially your enemies, because you cannot afford to have enemies. So really take inventory and notice who you curse, because as I've said, you cannot afford that. So please take that to heart. Make that a simple practice every day. Just do it formally, okay? Just for a minute, just go through a simple inventory. May all beings be blessed. May all governments be blessed. May all politicians be blessed. May all corporations be blessed. May all CEOs be blessed. May my neighbors be blessed. May my parents be blessed. May my spouse be blessed. May my children be blessed. May my dogs be blessed. May all, you know, everybody everywhere be blessed. May all my enemies be blessed so that I no longer have any enemies. That's the important thing. Okay. You just want to be clear about that. And then anytime you catch yourself in the day cursing anybody, just pause and just don't be fearful of it. Don't turn it into a big thing like, oh no, I'm ruining my life. Just it's like, okay, you've already been doing that. Now the good news is you noticed it and you can stop. That's it. So just be grateful. Just say, I'm so grateful that I've become aware that I was cursing. I forgive myself and I choose now to bless those beings. Okay. And then the fifth step is to release. In particular, I'm suggesting focus on releasing the beliefs because you can get very, very good results that way. Use whatever process works for you. Again, remember, you don't have to make it complicated. The heavy lifting is done for you just by making it conscious. So write down the limiting beliefs, and then awareness and intention to release is sufficient given time. But you can speed that up with a good method. And as I've said, I have found that this LEFCO method, or at least the modification that I've suggested, is very, very good. It gives quick and lasting results. So try that out. And one last time I'll say it, I absolutely guarantee, I mean, without any hesitation, when you do these things consistently every day, even if you did it like a couple times a week, but better if you do it every day, you will see the results. You will see changes. There's absolutely no way that you could not, as long as you do it sincerely. If you get stuck on any of this stuff, ask me questions. I'm happy to offer support and clarify things for you because I want you to get the results. I really sincerely do. I know for sure that we're all better off when everybody's better off. I want everybody to know. I want you to know your power. I want you to know who you are. I want you to be happy. I want you to be successful. I want you to have a good life. I want you to be fulfilled. It's for your good and my good and everybody's good. We're all in this together. So get good results. Let me know your results. If you have questions, let me know your questions and we'll get that clarified for you. And so I'll wrap this up and then we'll stay on for group coaching for everybody who's here live. Just a few last words for people who see this on YouTube. Uh, Number one, if you are interested in attending these meetings live, you're welcome to do so. You can get that information by signing up for my newsletter on my website, joeylott.com. The link will be in the description below. Um, Two, I am still offering free introductory coaching calls. For those who are interested, you can learn more at joeylott.com/intro, INTRO. I think that's right. There'll be a link below in the description. And just those do tend to go quickly. So please understand that, yes, they are still available. Sometimes people are asking me, are they still available? Yeah, they're still available. That's why I'm saying they're available. So as long as that page is there and it says that they're available, then they're available. Please read everything that's on the page because it does say on the page, and I'm going to say it now also, the sessions do tend to go quickly. I do allow people to book those sessions 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks in advance. So on my calendar, you will only see availability for 2 weeks. The calendar shows forever, and it will not show availability beyond 2 weeks. So if you see nothing available, it just means that there's nothing available for the next 2 weeks, but new sessions will show up on the calendar. You just have to check back. And again, those also go quickly. So I understand that can be frustrating for some people, but that's how it is. There is also a wait list, which you can sign up for so you can get opportunities if they're like last minute cancellations or availability that comes up last minute. I will announce it there and it's first come, first serve. So you can also do that. And that's all available there through that page on joeylott.com/intro. Last thing is for those who are interested in a supported, guided process for creating a simple, sustainable daily routine that will help ensure that you get good results. You may be interested in the Manifesting Truth program, which is a paid program. You can find out more information about that at joeylott.com/manifesting-truth. That's a bit longer. That's also in the description below. Okay. So blessings to you all. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you next time. And for those who are here live, stay on for the group coaching.